I always thought the sound of a phone ringing after midnight was just a cliché in movies, some dramatic device to signal disaster. But on a Thursday night in Riverview, Washington, that sound tore through my kitchen like a blade. I had just closed my laptop, trying to finish accounting reports before the deadline, when my phone vibrated, lighting up the dark counter. Riverview Police Department. My stomach tightened instantly. I picked up. Hello? A male voice on the other end, flat, official, almost bored, said, "Ma'am, this is Sergeant Coleman. Your brother, Daniel Bennett, has been involved in a hit-and-run accident. He's being held at the station." My heart stopped. Hit and run. I pressed my hand against the countertop to stay upright. No, that's impossible. Daniel doesn't. He was identified by a witness and matched to the vehicle description, the sergeant interrupted. "You may come down to the station." Then he hung up. No details. No explanation. My keys were in my hand before the disbelief even settled. Daniel wasn't just my brother. He was the person who fixed my car on weekends, watched my kids when I worked late, and apologized when he was wrong even if he didn't have to be. He'd never leave the scene of an accident. He'd never run from anything. Something was off. Badly off. The drive to the station felt unreal: empty roads, wet pavement, headlights reflecting in long silver streaks. The kind of night where reality feels like it's slipping sideways. Inside the station, I found him sitting on a metal bench, hands shaking, eyes wide like an animal cornered. "Laura," he breathed out when he saw me. "I didn't do it." "I know," I whispered back instantly. Because I did. My bones knew. Before I could ask anything else, Sergeant Coleman stepped forward with a clipboard under his arm. "Miss Bennett, your brother's truck was seen leaving the scene of a collision on Redwood Avenue. A cyclist was injured. We have a witness and partial plate match." Daniel's voice cracked. "That's not possible. My truck was parked behind the bar the whole night. I left it there." Morning at the Riverview Police Department felt like walking into a place that hadn't slept in years. Old coffee, buzzing fluorescent lights, stacks of paperwork, everything looked tired. Everything except Sergeant Coleman, who seemed almost energized by the situation. Daniel sat across from him at a metal table, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like someone bracing for a storm he didn't deserve. Coleman slid a folder between them. "Mr. Bennett, your truck was reported near Redwood Avenue at the time of a traffic incident," he said, voice steady, rehearsed. "A witness described a vehicle similar to yours." Daniel lifted his head slowly. "With all due respect, Sergeant, my truck didn't move all night. I left it behind the bar because I didn't want to drive. I walked home." Coleman didn't blink. "And yet someone claims otherwise." I stepped closer, trying to keep my voice controlled. "Where's the camera footage?" "That area has public surveillance." Coleman tightened his jaw, just a little, but enough for me to notice. "The footage wasn't stored correctly," he said. "Technical error." "Right. A convenient error." My instincts were already screaming that something was off, and the way Coleman straightened his shoulders only made it worse. Like he'd already decided how this story should end. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Can I at least call my boss? He'll confirm I wasn't anywhere near." "You'll have time for that," Coleman cut in. "Right now, we're focusing on the report." A young officer walked in, whispered something to Coleman, and handed him a printed page. Coleman skimmed it, then looked right at me. "We received a partial license plate from a caller. It matches the first 3 digits of your brother's truck." Daniel shook his head immediately. "That street has at least 4 trucks with similar plates. Half the town drives the same model." I stepped in. "And a partial plate isn't evidence." Coleman didn't argue. He didn't need to. He just held that calm, unreadable expression that made my stomach twist. "Ma'am," he said, turning to me, "we're doing our best to sort this out." But something told me he wasn't. Then he said something that froze the air around us. "Until we receive additional confirmation, Daniel will remain our primary subject of interest. Not suspect. Not accused. Just something vague enough to keep him stuck here." I felt anger rising, but I kept my voice level. "What confirmation are you waiting for?" Coleman closed the folder. "A second witness. They're on their way now." Daniel's head snapped up. "What second?" The door to the small interview room opened with a kind of slow, deliberate motion that made my pulse spike. I expected someone confident, someone sure of what they saw, maybe even someone who had a personal problem with my brother. But instead, a middle-aged man stepped inside, looking nervous, wringing his hands like he wished he were anywhere else. Sergeant Coleman straightened. "Mr. Collins, thank you for coming." The man nodded quickly, eyes darting between Daniel and me, like he wasn't sure whether he was helping or making a mistake. I stepped back, giving him space. Daniel lifted his chin, tense but respectful. Coleman gestured to a chair. "Please have a seat." Collins sat but couldn't keep still. His knee bounced, his fingers tapped the table, and his gaze kept drifting toward the floor. Coleman began gently, too gently to be real. "You told dispatch you saw a truck near Redwood Avenue last night. You mentioned you might recognize it." The man swallowed hard. Yeah. I was walking my dog. I saw a truck turning the corner. Same model as his." He nodded toward Daniel without looking directly at him. "And the color was close too." "Close," I said, keeping my tone level. "Or exact?" Collins winced. I'm not sure. It was dark." Coleman ignored that detail. "Would you say it resembled Mr. Bennett's vehicle?" Collins hesitated, long enough to make the silence feel heavy. "It resembled it," he finally said. Daniel pressed his palms against the table. "But you couldn't see the driver, right?" "No," Collins whispered. "Couldn't see anybody." I stepped forward, speaking calmly but firmly. "Mr. Collins, did you see the truck hit anyone? Or leave any scene?" Collins shook his head quickly. "No, I didn't see any impact. Just saw a truck driving by." The room shifted. Even Coleman's expression tightened for half a second. This witness hadn't seen anything meaningful. But Coleman still pressed on. "Did you happen to catch part of the license plate?" Collins shook his head again. "No. I only noticed the first digit, maybe. Or I thought I did." "You thought?" I repeated softly. Collins inhaled slowly, then looked up straight at me. I told the officer on the phone I wasn't sure," he said. "I just thought it might help." Daniel exhaled sharply, relief flickering in his eyes. But Coleman moved in fast, like he was trying to grab control before it slipped. "Mr. Collins, would you say you're confident enough that this information is relevant to the investigation?" Collins blinked. "I guess." Not an answer. Not evidence. Just a scared man trying to contribute something because he felt pressured. And that was when Daniel finally spoke, voice steady and clear. "Sir, did anyone tell you I was a suspect before you came in?" Collins froze. A tiny moment. Barely a second. "But I saw it." His silence said everything. Finally, he whispered. "The officer on the phone said you might be involved." I turned slowly toward Coleman. His expression didn't change. Not even a flinch. But I felt the air shift. We weren't dealing with uncertainty. By the time Collins left, the room felt different. Not safer, just thinner. Like the whole case had suddenly lost weight, and Coleman was desperately trying to hold it up with empty hands. I crossed my arms and stared straight at him. "Sergeant, I'd like to see the camera logs from Redwood Avenue." Coleman didn't blink. "There are none." I stepped closer. "What do you mean none?" "That intersection has had surveillance since last summer. The town voted on it. The mayor made a speech about it." Coleman paused for just a fraction of a second. Too short for most people to notice. Long enough for me. "The camera was undergoing maintenance," he said. "No footage was recorded." "Maintenance," I repeated. "On a Thursday night? Without notice? Without a work order?" He cleared his throat. "It happens." "No, it doesn't. Not in Riverview. Not in any small town where people complain to the city council if a streetlight flickers for 5 minutes." Daniel looked up at me slowly, and I could tell he was starting to understand the same thing I was. Someone didn't want that footage to exist. I leaned on the table, keeping my voice calm and level. "Sergeant, who's responsible for city camera maintenance?" He didn't look at me. "Public Works." "And do you have a report confirming the maintenance?" "It hasn't been filed yet." "Convenient." Coleman shut the folder loudly, like a period he wanted to slam into the conversation. This isn't a debate, he said. We have a partial plate match and a witness who saw a similar vehicle. That's enough to move forward. With what? I shot back. Speculation. Daniel put a hand on my arm, trying to steady me. But I wasn't angry, I was focused. Coleman stood, tucking the folder under his arm. Your brother will remain here until we finish reviewing his statement. I stepped in front of him. My brother isn't running anywhere. He came willingly. You have no grounds to hold him. He hesitated. Again, just for a second. But the confidence in his posture softened, cracking at the edges. Then, as if on cue, Officer Ramirez, one of the younger, quieter officers, appeared in the doorway. Sergeant, he said, can I speak with you for a moment? It's important. Coleman shot him a sharp look. Ramirez didn't back down. Coleman huffed and stepped outside with him. The door closed. Daniel whispered. What now? I glanced at the hallway. Now, we wait. Minutes passed. Long ones. The kind that stretched time in uncomfortable directions. Finally, the door opened again, and Ramirez stepped inside alone, running a hand over his jaw like someone who had just argued with his boss and wasn't sure if he'd still have a job tomorrow. He closed the door behind him. Then he said quietly, You both need to know something. Daniel straightened. Ramirez lowered his voice even further. The camera wasn't broken. My breath caught. Ramirez looked between us, eyes full of conflict. And the footage didn't disappear. He exhaled shakily. It was pulled. Officer Ramirez stood with his back half turned to the door, as if he expected Coleman to burst in at any moment. His voice stayed low and uneven, the voice of a man who knew he was crossing a line, but crossed it anyway because something inside him wouldn't let him stay quiet. Daniel leaned forward. What do you mean it was pulled? Ramirez swallowed hard. The Redwood Avenue footage was archived at 2:11 a.m., he said. Manually. Someone logged into the system and transferred the files before they could be auto-synced into the city server. I felt a cold pressure settle behind my ribs. Who accessed it? Ramirez shook his head. I can't say that. The login was marked internal use. But I can tell you this, whoever did it had full administrative permissions. That meant someone higher ranked than Coleman. Someone who had control over the system. Someone who didn't want evidence to exist. Daniel rubbed his face. So the footage, it still exists? Ramirez nodded. Yeah, it's on a portable drive. I saw the log entry myself. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. Officer Ramirez, why are you telling us this? He hesitated. Then he spoke the kind of sentence that changes the direction of a case completely. Because your brother didn't leave that truck last night. I saw him walking home around 10. He waved at me. The truck never moved. Daniel looked like he might collapse. Ramirez continued, eyes troubled. When the call about the incident came in, I told Sergeant Coleman I hadn't seen your truck anywhere near Redwood. But he told me my recollection wasn't reliable because it was dark. My stomach twisted. It wasn't about your recollection, I said. It was about the story he wanted. Ramirez nodded gently. I think someone up top wants this closed fast. And your brother's truck, it fits what they needed. It clicked then, clean, sharp, painful. The case wasn't about finding the truth. It was about filling out a report. Fast. Neat. Without complications. I took a breath. Officer Ramirez, can the footage be recovered? He looked at the door again, then leaned closer. Yes. But if Coleman or anyone else realizes I told you, I'm done here. I placed a hand over his, steady and sincere. We don't want to get you in trouble. We want the truth. Daniel nodded, voice breaking. Please. I just need someone to believe me. Ramirez's expression softened at that. He straightened his shoulders, like a man preparing for a climb he didn't want to make. I'll see what I can do, he said. But you didn't hear any of this from me. And with that, he slipped out of the room. The door clicked shut. Daniel exhaled shakily. Laura, what do we do now? I stared at the empty doorway, the sound of Ramirez's footsteps fading down the hall. What do? We fight. We dig. We tear down whatever wall someone built around the truth. And we make damn sure the right story reaches the courtroom. The station felt different after Ramirez left, like the walls themselves were listening. Daniel sat beside me in the small interview room, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor as if the answer to everything might appear in the tile pattern. I kept replaying Ramirez's words in my head. The footage wasn't deleted. It was pulled. Someone with power had chosen to remove the one thing that could clear my brother instantly. And that meant someone had a reason to keep him looking guilty. A reason we didn't know yet. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't Coleman. It was Officer Ramirez, carrying a stack of blank forms. For a second, I thought he'd changed his mind, that fear had grabbed him. But when he sat across from us, he slid a single sticky note under the forms. Fast. Quiet. Too quick for any camera to catch. A 6-digit number. A time. A location. And one word, drive. He didn't look up. Didn't say a word. Just stood, gathered the blank forms, and walked out. Daniel grabbed the note, reading it twice. "What is this?" he whispered. I leaned closer. "It's where the drive is." The maintenance storage room was located in the back of the Public Works building, just outside city jurisdiction, just far enough that no one paid attention unless something flooded or froze. The time listed was 4:20 p.m. 2 hours from now. Daniel shook his head. "We can't just walk out. They still think I'm a suspect." But right then, the door opened again and Coleman stepped in, expression tight, body language tense enough to crack. He held a clipboard but didn't sit. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "you're free to go for now. But stay available. We're continuing our investigation." Daniel blinked. "What?" "Now." Coleman avoided my eyes. "Yes." Officer Ramirez clarified some timeline discrepancies. "We won't be holding you further at this time." At this time. A phrase meant to sound polite but dripping with warning. He stepped aside. Daniel and I walked out, grabbed his jacket from the front desk, and exited the station. The moment the doors closed behind us, he turned to me. "What just happened?" I held up the note. "We follow this." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Laura, what if this is dangerous? What if we get someone in trouble who's just trying to help? Or worse, what if we walk into something meant to keep us quiet?" I gripped the note tightly. "Then we go together." The truth wasn't going to walk to us. The truth was being kept somewhere it didn't belong. And if that drive existed, if it showed Daniel's truck sitting untouched all night, we'd finally have the leverage to flip this case upside down. We drove across town in silence. Past the river. Past the old mill. Into the industrial section where streetlights flickered and no one cared enough to fix them. Public Works was a squat, gray building tucked behind a row of equipment sheds. A single truck was parked out front. The clock on the dash hit 4:20. Daniel glanced at me. "You ready?" I nodded. But as we stepped out of the car and walked toward the maintenance entrance, a shadow moved behind the frosted glass. The figure inside the maintenance room moved with a purpose that made my pulse spike. This wasn't someone searching casually or sorting paperwork. This was someone digging fast, focused, knowing exactly what they wanted. And they were holding a portable drive. The drive. Daniel pulled me back behind the doorway, his breath quick and shallow. "Who is that?" he whispered. I risked a glance through the narrow strip of glass. The person wore a dark jacket, hood up, back turned to us. They opened a drawer, rummaged, checked over their shoulder, then slipped the drive into their pocket. Not a clerk. Not a tech. Not Ramirez. Someone who didn't want the footage found. Daniel exhaled sharply. "They're going to destroy it," he said. "Or hide it somewhere we'll never find." I grabbed his sleeve before he could move. "Wait. If we confronted them now, we'd lose everything. If Coleman had allies, or if someone above him was pulling strings, this person wasn't acting alone. And we had no idea what they were capable of, or how far the department would go to keep this under wraps. We needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable." Daniel whispered, "What do we do?" "Watch," I said. "And follow if we can." We crouched lower as the door inside opened and the figure stepped out, glancing up and down the empty hallway before walking toward the exit. I held my breath as they passed close enough that I could smell the faint scent of industrial cleaner on their jacket. Then they left the building. We slipped inside the room the moment they were gone. The cabinet door they'd been searching was still open. Inside, neatly arranged evidence drives, clear labeled boxes, everything accounted for except the one they took. Daniel pointed to the logbook on the counter. Dates. Times. Signatures. They're the last entry. 2:11 a.m. Footage transferred. Admin level access. Signed, T. Coleman. My chest tightened. Sergeant Coleman pulled it, I whispered. Daniel's jaw clenched. So he was hiding it from the start. I flipped the page. There were no further entries. Coleman hadn't logged the transfer to any other location. The drive in that stranger's pocket. That was the only physical copy. Before I could say anything, Daniel looked out the same frosted glass panel. They're getting in their car. We hurried to the exit and stepped outside just in time to see a dark SUV pulling out from behind the building. No plates visible. Tinted windows. Too clean. Too deliberate. Daniel jumped into the driver's seat of our car. Laura, get in. I buckled in as he pulled onto the road, keeping enough distance to avoid being noticed, but close enough not to lose them. The SUV headed away from town, toward the industrial outskirts, where the road eventually split, one way to the lumber yard, the other to county storage. The SUV made a sharp turn toward the storage units. Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel. They're going to stash it, he said. Or destroy it. The SUV slowed and rolled into the gated entrance. A keycard flashed. The gate opened. Daniel pulled over half a block away, engine running, heart pounding. Laura, the inside of the storage unit smelled like dust, cold metal, and something else, something unmistakably wrong. A portable work light sat on a folding table, humming faintly, illuminating stacks of cardboard boxes and a small lockbox placed right in the center, like a spotlight waiting for the main act. The hooded figure stood over it. They hadn't noticed us yet. Daniel and I moved quietly, sticking to the shadows near the doorway, hearts pounding in sync. The figure pulled off their hood. And my stomach dropped. It wasn't Coleman. It wasn't some stranger. It was Lieutenant Harris, one of the highest-ranking officers in Riverview PD. A man who'd shaken my hand at the town fair, who'd spoken at safety meetings, who'd reassured the community he stood for transparency. Daniel whispered, "What is he doing here?" Harris took the portable drive from his jacket and placed it inside the lockbox. Then he did something that confirmed everything. He pulled out a small hammer. Not violent. Not threatening. Just a simple tool with one purpose, to smash a piece of evidence quietly, cleanly, permanently. Daniel stepped forward instinctively. Hey! Harris flinched and spun around, stunned. His eyes widened. Daniel? Laura? What? How did you? Daniel didn't back down. He didn't yell. His voice was calm, low, controlled. You were going to destroy the drive, he said. The footage that proves I wasn't anywhere near that street. Harris inhaled slowly, shoulders tightening. You both need to leave. Now. No, I said. Not until you explain why a decorated officer is handling evidence in a storage unit instead of a police locker. Harris closed his eyes briefly, a flicker of guilt, regret, exhaustion. Not the face of a man who hates us. The face of a man trapped. He lowered the hammer. This doesn't concern you, he muttered. It concerns us completely, I said. You're framing my brother. The silence snapped in two. And then Harris spoke, voice trembling in a way I'd never expected. I'm not framing anyone. I'm covering for someone. Daniel stiffened. Who? Harris swallowed hard. My son. My breath froze. He continued, each word heavy. He was driving last night. He panicked. He called me before he called 911. I checked the scene myself. There was no major damage, no serious incident, just a scare. But he thought he'd be arrested. He begged me for help. Daniel stared at him, stunned. So you chose me? Daniel whispered. You chose my truck? Harris nodded, his voice cracking. It matched the call description. I thought, just temporarily. I thought I'd fix it before anyone got hurt. I didn't expect it to go this far. He set the hammer down. I'm sorry. The apology didn't erase what he'd done, but it shook something loose in me. I stepped closer. You need to give us the drive, I said quietly.